What's up, guys? This is the Gospel According to Mark with a C. He is I, and I am he. Just taking some time to tell you exactly what's on my mind. Thank you for joining me once again, my friends. Hope all is well with you. Now, guys, we're going to talk about this controversy surrounding the movie Killers of the Flower Moon. But first, I want to get into my impressions of this movie so I can set it up. You can see what's going on here because I did see it this weekend. Now, Killers of the Flower Moon, as some of you already know, was directed by veteran filmmaker Martin Scorcese, and it stars powerhouses such as Robert De Niro, Leonardo DiCaprio, and a great turn by this new actress, Lily Gladstone. All right, now the movie, it concerns the Osage Nation, which is a tribe of indigenous people. They're Indian, and they find oil on their land, on their tribal land, which makes them freaking filthy rich overnight. You know, it's like black gold, Texas tea, oil, that is. So in one scene, you see them discovering this oil. They're all dancing around. The oil is all, they're like, we're in the money. Ha ha, we're in the money. I'm like, holy shit. What's going to happen next? Next scene, the white man, D. Whitman, comes to town, right? So it's like the government is now here. They have to help them to manage this money, right? Or manage the oil and the wealth that they're getting from this money. So in the beginning, you see that they're prospering. You see, like, you know, they're driving fancy cars and walking around with fancy clothes on and all of this stuff. And I'm like, this shit is not going to last. And then we're introduced to Leonardo DiCaprio's character, Ernest Burkhart, I think his name is, right? So he comes to town and he's just looking like Leonardo, just is like changing the whole shape of his face and everything. He's a great actor. I'll give him that. You know what I mean? So he comes into town and, you know, he's going to go work for his uncle, who is played by Robert De Niro. You see Robert De Niro, you know some stuff is getting effed up, okay? He's in a Scorcese movie too. It cannot be good. So he's standing there like, come here, my boy, come here, give me a hug. And he's pretending to be a friend of the Osage people, right? But you know it's Robert De Niro, bro. You can't trust him. The only thing that's missing is a Joe Pesci. They're about to turn this place out, right? So what it is they put this plan into effect where they're going to steal their wealth. Murders start happening. It's terrible. The movie is 3.5 hours. 3.5 hours of terribleness. All right. So it's kind of hard to watch. It was hard for me to watch because ultimately everything that they set out to do, they were just doing it, man. And they made it look easy. Like they're killing these poor people. They're taking advantage of them. Leonardo DiCaprio spends most of the movie acting like, oh my God, what have I done? But at the same time, he's still doing it. You know what I mean? And they're like marrying these rich Osage women, but then they're turning up dead. And it's rough because it just goes on and on and on. Like every scene is them plotting and carrying out the murders of these people. You know what I mean? It's just like, okay, what are we here for? Especially for 3.5 hours. I mean, listen, I appreciate the powerful acting. Absolutely. But at the same time, I'm like, man, this is getting monotonous. You know what I mean? So I'm like looking at this thing like, bro, what's happening? What's good? Tell me something, you know? Like, what's going to happen here? Are we going to get some resolution? But no, it just goes on and on and on, the killings, right? So anyway, it's funny because Robert De Niro, if you want to know what kind of character he is, picture his character. What was it? Jimmy, right? It was Jimmy in Goodfellas. You know, at the end when he's trying to get Karen to go in that alley over there because there's some coats or something that he dresses, some real nice dresses. Go on. There's a guy back there. He'll show you to just go on. Look at me. Right. So he's telling her, go back there. Right. And she's like, he's like, go on. And everybody knows that she's about to get her wig peeled. You know, she's about to get busted. She's about to get killed. Right. She's going to get killed. So she gets hip to it. She's suspicious. He's like, no, I think I'm okay, Jimmy. I think I'm okay. And she walks off. Now, the Osage women, they're not like that. Jimmy is telling her, De Niro is saying, go on back there. You can trust me. I'm your friend. I love you. Go on. You can do it. You can have whatever you want. And they're like, okay. And they go back there. Next scene, dead Osage woman just laying there. Oh, she's dead. Scene after scene after scene. They go down the alley. They get killed. It's like that. You know what I mean? So that's the way the movie is, guys. And at 3.5 hours, if I were to rate this thing, I would definitely give it something like 2.5 flushes because there was a lot of shit in there. To me, was just monotonous. It just didn't need to be there. I understand the master craftsman that Scorsese is. I understand how much fun it is to watch De Niro and DiCaprio and things like that. But damn it, man, that movie could have been 2 hours. It didn't have to be 3.5 hours, man. It really didn't. Not for the story that it told. It was simple. a couple of times, DiCaprio's character says, "I love money," and that was the motivation. They love money. They were some greedy motherfuckers. They were some greedy bastards, you know, and they didn't care who they had to kill to do what it is that they had to do. There wasn't any motivation other than the fact that they were greedy. So why we got that for 3.5 hours was beyond me. But anyway, so I gave it 2.5 flushes because, yeah, it could have been easily trimmed, even though I did enjoy the performances. The scenery looked great. The music was cool and everything. But damn, that was overkill, guys. But anyway, the point that we're going to get into here is we have an actress from the movie Reservation Dogs, all right? Reservation Dogs. And her name is Devery Jacobs. I think that's how you pronounce it. Devery Jacobs. And she is taking offense to the movie Killers of the Flower Moon. And we're going to get into why, because I saw this on Twitter, and this is what she had to say about this. She's talking about her impressions of this movie as well. Now, she also is native, so this is what she had to say about this. She starts off by saying, "I have thoughts. I have strong feelings. The film was painful, grueling, unrelenting, and unnecessarily graphic." And she goes on to say, "Being native, watching this movie was effing hellfire. Imagine the worst atrocities committed against your ancestors, then having to sit through a movie explicitly filled with them, with the only respite being 30-minute long sequences of murderous white guys talking about planning the killings." And this is true, because every scene just went around in circles. They whispered, they plotted, they killed. They whispered, they plotted, they killed. The only thing that was missing was Hannibal from the A-Team coming out saying, "I love it when a plan comes together," because that's all that was happening. They planned it and they carried it out. And the undignified aspect of this was that the actual Osage people never really seemed to catch on to what was going on. Dude, you could have listened to some Biggie Smalls. He would have told you more money, more problems. It's like they got the money, they got the oil, people started dying. It's not that hard to understand. They got the money, they got the oil, they got the wealth. White guys moved in, they started dying. Oh, what do you think is happening here? She goes on to say, "It must be noted that Lily Gladstone is an absolute legend and carried Molly with tremendous grace." Yes, she did. She did. Molly is the character, not the drug. Molly is the character that Leonardo DiCaprio married in order to get her wealth. Okay, like it was weird because it's Leonardo DiCaprio, so you're used to seeing him in like romantic roles or a romantic leading man or something like that. So you want to believe that this dude actually loves her, and on some level I believe he did in the movie, but it didn't stop him from doing the things that he had to do to take advantage of that woman. He was poisoning her. Eventually he probably would have killed her because he loves money. So anyway, all the incredible indigenous actors were the only redeeming factors of this film. Give Lily her G-damn Oscar. But while all the performances were strong, if you look proportionately, each of the Osage characters felt painfully underwritten, while the white men were given way more courtesy and depth. And she's right, because like I said, there were scenes where they were just barely putting it together, where there would be like a tribal council, there would be a group of guys and women who would get together trying to figure out what's going on with all of these murders. And they would kind of be implying that they knew what was going on, but at the same time, they weren't doing much about it because they knew they weren't going to get government cooperation for it, you know? So they were like, "Oh, more people are being killed. What are we going to do?" And then it would go back to the white guys who are planning and plotting and killing, you know? So they weren't really pronounced. It didn't look like they were doing a whole hell of a lot to stop what was going on there, okay? So it says here, and there's a reason for that too, but I'll get into that in a minute. She says, "Now I can understand that Martin Scorsese's technical direction is compelling, and seeing $200 million on screen is a sight to behold. I get the goal of this violence is to add brutal shock value that forces people to understand the real horrors that happen to this community. But I don't feel that these were very real people. I don't feel these very real people were shown honor or dignity in the horrific portrayal of their deaths. Contrarily, I believe that by showing more murdered Native women on screen, it normalizes the violence committed against us and further dehumanizes our people." Now, there's a reason for this, guys, because from what I can understand, and I've been reading about this, the movie existed, it could have went two different ways, all right? What we got was basically from the point of view of the killers. And that's probably because the killers were played by Robert De Niro and Leonardo DiCaprio, among others. But these are the biggest names in the movie. These are the people that you want to see performances by. So by focusing on the killers, whose motives were not at all complicated, it did take away, I felt, from the Osage and the native actors that were there, because most of the movie probably should have been focused on the natives and how they felt about being killed off, and what they might have done to try to offset that. But that's the way they chose to go. But originally, I think what they were trying to do is they were going to make a movie based on the investigators, the FBI, who were coming in, or I think it was the beginning of the FBI. What was it? The Department of Justice. They were coming in to try to figure out what was going on with the murders. That was supposed to be the original pitch for the movie. So it was going to focus on, and Leo was going to play one of the Department of Justice agents. But he thought, and they thought, that it was more interesting to have it be from the killer's point of view. Now, if it had been from the Department of Justice point of view, and also the Osage point of view, you might have got a more well-rounded narration here. But because they chose to do it the way they did, that's the way it played out. You know what I mean? Like, think maybe A Few Good Men, or there was a movie called A Soldier's Story, one of my favorites, by the way, where the movie was kind of like told in flashbacks while the investigator or the agent was investigating the murders. So you got like different points of view and things like that. I think it would have been more fulfilling that way, especially if you're going to go for damn 3.5 hours. But it says, and to top it off, to see the way the film nerds are celebrating and eating this shit up, it makes my stomach hurt. Well, of course the film nerds are going to celebrate and eat this up. You got Scorcese, you got De Niro, you got DiCaprio. It is what it is, you know what I mean? And they're on a big budget. You know what you're going to get there. She says, I can't believe it needs to be said, but indigenous people exist beyond our grief, trauma, and atrocities. Our pride at being native, our languages, cultures, joy, and love are way more interesting and humanizing than showing the horrors that white men inflicted on us. Go ahead, sister. That's what I'm talking about. If only black people would learn something from this. Wallowing in victimhood is not the way to go. This is not a dignified way to always be represented on screen. And this is my point. This is the point that I'm trying to make here. We have to be well-rounded people with our own motivations, with our own frailties, things like that. I'm sure that there are some people maybe on the Osage side who knew what was going on. Maybe they were playing into it. Maybe they did. But to just have it be like very distinctly defined as a white man versus Indian thing, it's almost as ridiculous as back in the day when they had Indians versus cowboys back in the day, and they just demonized the Indians. Of course, it was more complicated than that, guys. But I don't know. Try to make that point these days. Sorry, I had to do it. This is the issue when non-native directors are given the liberty to tell our stories. They center the white perspective and focus on native people's pain. Okay. For the Osage communities involved in creating this film, I can only imagine how cathartic it is to see these stories and histories finally acknowledged, especially on such a prestigious platform like this film. There was beautiful work done by so many Wasazis on this film. But admittedly, I would prefer to see a $200 million movie from an Osage filmmaker telling this story any day of the week. Okay, and I'm sorry, but Scorsese choosing to end on a shot of the Iloshka dances and drumming, it doesn't absolve the film from painting native folks as helpless victims without agency. Well, like I said, and then she wishes a rest in peace to all of the Indian women who were killed and the Osage folks who were murdered over greed. Tobacco down for the countless Osage folks today whose family histories have been marked by these atrocities. The pain is real and isn't limited to the film's 3 hours and 26 minutes. Okay. All right. So anyway, she goes on to give a middle finger to everyone who benefited from that time. And I don't blame her for that. It was a bad thing that was done. And the movie does a good job of actually showing that. But once again, guys, this is what happens, when you set out to tell a story like this and it kind of gets lost. Like the motivation, it kind of gets wasted on the execution when you're not actually painting these people as well-rounded human beings. And this is the problem we see in Hollywood. Obviously, even a veteran filmmaker like Martin Scorsese can't overcome that type of thing. Even if you had the best of intentions, sometimes it can go wrong, and this is the ongoing critique of this type of thing, you need to be in touch with the community that you're trying to represent and the story that you're trying to tell. They need to get as much of their narrative and their point of view in it to make it as authentic as possible. And this is the point that I'm always trying to make. It doesn't mean that different people can't tell the stories of different people. It just means that you really have to go out of your way to be informed. Otherwise, you run the risk of something like this. But I would say on the upside, at least this is increasing knowledge and awareness to people who didn't know about what happened to the Osage. You can go read about it. You can go read the book, things like that. But I just think that it's ironic. Of course, Martin Scorsese has been doing a lot of dumping on the MCU and stuff like that, talking about what is and what is not cinema, But even he is not above this type of criticism, guys. But I don't know if you've seen this movie. You can get in the comment section and let me know, what did you make of that? Specifically, if there are any natives, indigenous people who are out there who are familiar with this, who might have had ancestors who have some knowledge of this, or, just if you have opinions about how this was portrayed, I do welcome that in the comment section. Let me know, guys, what you think about this. As always, I thank you for listening. I thank you for watching. I thank you for your support, for sharing, for the super thanks. You guys are the absolute best. And I will see you on the next one. This is The Gospel According to Mark with a C. Rock on.